You've rehearsed it 100 times in your head. You know your numbers, you know your value, and you know you deserve more. So you walk into your boss's office, you sit down, and the moment they look at you, something shifts. You get smaller. You say something like, "I was just wondering, if it's not too much trouble, maybe we could talk about my compensation at some point." And then you wait. And they either brush it off or give you a vague non-answer. And you walk out feeling like you failed yourself. Again, here's the thing. You didn't fail because you weren't good enough. You failed because you walked in asking. And asking is the single biggest mistake you can make. Most people think negotiating a raise is about timing it right, presenting the data professionally, and being polite but firm. They've read the articles. They know to come with a number, to anchor high, to not apologize. So they prepare a logical case and walk in, hoping reason will win the day. But logic doesn't determine who gets paid more. Psychology does. And the psychology happening in that room is working completely against you the moment you position yourself as someone requesting a favor. Because that's what asking is. A favor request. And favors can be denied. Here's the problem. From the moment you frame this as a conversation you need to have, you've already handed over all the power. Your boss isn't just evaluating your performance in that moment. They're reading your energy, your certainty, your social positioning. And if you come in hat in hand, they process that information immediately, instinctively, below the level of conscious thought. It's not what you say. It's what your posture communicates before you open your mouth. Here's the deeper truth. Every negotiation is a dominance frame. Not dominance in the aggressive sense, but in the social sense. Someone in the conversation is operating from a position of need, and someone is operating from a position of choice. Whoever is perceived as having the most options holds the most power. Your boss knows this intuitively, even if they've never articulated it. When you ask for a raise, you signal need. You signal that you require their approval to advance. And approval seeking in social hierarchies is a signal of lower status. It triggers a subtle but powerful shift in how the other person relates to you. Dark psychology isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding which signals you're sending and choosing different ones. But it goes deeper than that. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called the scarcity principle. And most people only know it in the context of products and sales. But it applies just as powerfully to people. When something is rare, limited, or potentially unavailable, it becomes more desirable, more worth fighting for. Right now, your boss likely perceives you as a reliable constant. You show up, you deliver, you stay. There's no scarcity signal. There's no sense that you might be gone. And without that signal, there's no urgency to give you more. You're not underpaid because you're not valuable. You're underpaid because you've made yourself feel permanent. And permanence gets taken for granted. We'll come back to exactly how you change that perception. But first, let's talk about what's really happening in the room. Picture this. It's a Tuesday. You've just finished a project that went really well, maybe even exceptional. You feel the momentum. You think, now's the time. And so you knock on your boss's door and say, "Do you have a minute? I wanted to talk about something." Already, your boss's brain has categorized this conversation before it begins. Someone who wants something from them. Not someone delivering something. Want. That one word, wanted, activates a subtle psychological guard. They're already in the posture of deciding whether to give or withhold before a single word about money has been spoken. Now contrast that with a different approach. You walk in after that same successful project and say, "I've been getting some external interest and I wanted to be transparent with you before it progresses further." And then you wait. Same person, same track record, completely different room. Their brain is now in a totally different mode. not evaluating whether to give you something, but evaluating how not to lose something. That shift, from scarcity of desire to fear of loss, is one of the most powerful levers in human psychology. It's not that your boss doesn't value you. It's that they've never had a reason to quantify your value until they feared losing it. It's not that you're bad at negotiating. It's that you've been playing the wrong game entirely. It's not about being aggressive or difficult. It's about understanding that confidence isn't something you perform. It's something you signal through the options you appear to have. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The version of you that has options behaves completely differently than the version that needs this job. One asks, the other informs. Why do we ask instead of inform? Because deep down, most of us are operating from a scarcity mindset we've never examined. Somewhere, wired into your nervous system, is a belief that jobs are finite, that opportunity is limited, and that the safest strategy is to hold tightly to what you have. That belief isn't weakness. It's a survival mechanism that made sense at some earlier point, but it's costing you. It also connects to identity. Most people who are underpaid have unconsciously accepted a self-concept as someone who receives what they're given. They've absorbed the frame that the company holds the cards, and they hold requests. And until that identity shifts, until you genuinely see yourself as a resource being competed for, not a person hoping to be chosen, your body language, your word choices, your timing, and your energy will keep broadcasting the wrong signal. Social dominance isn't about power over others. It's about being unaffected by the need for their approval. And that state of being is learnable. But here's where this becomes a problem. If you keep approaching this negotiation from the approval-seeking frame, you're not just missing out on money. You're actively reinforcing the social dynamic that keeps you stuck. Every time you ask softly and accept a vague answer, you train both yourself and your boss that this is acceptable, that you'll wait, that you'll be patient, that you'll stay regardless. And companies rely on that, not maliciously. It's just efficient. Why pay more when the current arrangement works just fine for everyone except you? The longer you wait to shift this dynamic, the more entrenched the perception becomes. 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, they'll still see the same person who asks politely and accepts graciously, unless you give them a reason to see someone different. So let's reframe who you are in this situation. You are not an employee hoping for generosity. You are a professional with a specific and quantifiable output who is currently in a market where your skills are valued. You have already delivered. The question is not whether you deserve more. That's not even the right question. The right question is, at what point does the cost of replacing you, retraining someone, and absorbing the disruption become greater than the cost of simply paying you what you're worth? That's the calculation your boss is making. Your job is to make the math obvious. And you do that not by presenting a spreadsheet and a polite speech, but by making your optionality visible. Not fabricated, visible. Real conversations with recruiters, real awareness of what the market pays, real language that communicates you are in motion, not waiting. So, the next time you think about walking into that conversation, notice what state you're in. Are you going in hoping they'll say yes? Or are you going in knowing that the conversation itself is a signal about who you are? Remember that moment we started with, rehearsing it in your head, then shrinking the moment you sat down. That shrinking wasn't about your performance or your value. It was about a frame you walked into unconsciously, one that positioned you as the person who needs instead of the person who decides. The raise you want isn't behind a polished argument. It's behind a shift in how you see yourself in relation to the people who decide your pay. Change that, and the conversation changes with it. Not because you said the right things, but because you stopped needing them to say yes. If this made you look at your own workplace dynamics differently, if something here landed in a way that surprised you, stick around, because this is just the surface layer of how social psychology plays out in professional environments, and we go much deeper. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing what most people never think to look for.